And today we are doing something a little different. It's actually more traditional for my platform, and getting back to bringing to you, the listening audience, interesting and dynamic people from around the world who are doing great things. And nonetheless, we have a good brother with us today, brother T'Challa Bangoura, and he is a master drummer out of Chicago, and he's going to inform us about himself, what he's into, and the science and dynamics of the things which he's into. And it makes for a very good conversation. It's very enlightening, and I hope that you all get, much from this conversation. So, without further ado, brother T'Challa,
Yes.
peace,
All right.
peace.
Can you hear
Welcome
me?
to the platform. Yes, we can hear you good and well. I
All
want to
right.
say, welcome to the platform.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
It's a
All
great
right,
privilege.
all
Um,
right, all
well,
right,
first and foremost, I want to say I wouldn't call myself a master drummer per se. That's a very
all right,
high title, but I appreciate your words, brother.
all right. Well, if you won't accept it, we'll speak it into existence. I'm being prophetic at this moment in time. But yeah. So speaking of the drumming, can you uh, before we get there, just kind of tell us who you are, where you're from, and what what are you most known for?
Okay. Um, well, first, I was born and raised primarily here in Chicago. Um, and like many of us who are involved in this quote unquote conscious community, Africana studies on any level, um, I was one of those individuals who found my way gravitating towards who we are as African people. Um, and I actually grew up playing bongos in church. Um,
Mhm.
most of us are we're either raised Baptist Christian or some denomination of the sorts, and I was kind of raised and geared in music, language, and um, I would say aspiring scholarship because I wouldn't call myself a scholar, but I have been having to write and read from an early age. Um, and so growing up doing book reports on the Bible, growing up having to do extra book reports on my homework and things of that nature, reading comprehension became, one of my strong suits. Um, and so, with that said, I find myself joining an after school matters program in high school. Um, and, I really needed money to buy some clothes and sneakers that year for the summertime. And I came to what we call djembe, which is one of the instruments I play. And something felt familiar about it. I had been playing bongos in church and stepped away from that, and I just found myself being familiar with the whole thing, even though it was a different instrument. Um, and so, with that said, I kind of just went all the way and turned professional within a year because of the time that I put into it. Mind you, I was in high school, so I had that kind of time. And from there, here I am 13 years later, performing professionally. I've played in a few different states around the country, um, and it's just been a wonderful journey. And because of that, I sought out individuals online who also were involved in Africana studies, and found Amara squads that Shumani met a nature. And I come across this brother named asarimhotep doing a live stream. Um, and he's got all these different languages he's comparing, and he's talking about cognates and morphemes and all this, that, and the other. And I'm like, wait a minute, because I've always been very interested in language. So I gravitated towards that and was looking up the things this good brother was saying, background of linguistics, just to know that he wasn't another brother like some individuals who's just online saying stuff. Um, and so la la la, I purchased two of the brothers' books, Nisu Biddy and um, Where's the Love, and I was just absorbed by the works, um, because of the amount of sense that he was making, first of all, and two, um, it was really affirming and verifying what I had been as far with West Africa, in terms of talking about African traditions and how people do things. And so, yeah, I've found myself connecting music and language, and I've been really, as of late, starting to write myself and to put my thoughts on paper and to bring forth my experience when it comes to Africana studies.
All right. Now you talked about, you know, if I heard you correctly, how the drumming has, either motivated you or you've been inspired to get into the study of African history, more specifically West African history, in relationship to the drum. What has been some things that you have found in your studies in terms of the drum and its importance and the different types of drums? And and I know it's a loaded question, but the different types of drums and the meanings to people in Africa for the drums. What have you learned as a result of your engagement with the instrument itself, in relationship to your studies in Africana?
Um, so I'll start here
Mhm.
in what djembe means. Um,
All right.
Djembe, which you'll commonly find the spelling Djembe, um, that is the French spelling because um, the area that I study in West Africa, many of those countries are what you call francophone countries, right? And so djembe or diembe, um, with a more African pronunciation,
Mm-hmm.
it means to come together. It's
Mm-hmm.
about bringing, black people together, literally. Um, and what I have found with this drum, in terms of as it relates to African people, the importance and the whole nine, is that Africans are musical people. We are rhythmic, musical people. It's reflective in the language by spoken, as well as our language that we use with music. The music that I play, it is a language itself. Um, there are very intricate forms of communication when it comes to playing African music in general, but specifically with djembe music, the dancer and the drummer are always communicating, and the drummer is communicating with the rest of the ensemble. And it's not like a typical orchestra in Western classical sense where you have a conductor and he's telling everybody what to do and everybody's just kind of following along and reading sheet music. This tradition is an oral tradition, and it is everything for these people. Um, we, we grow up and we hear about how the drum was used to communicate miles and miles and miles away to other villages, and that's exactly true. Um, I was speaking to good brother Kofi a couple weeks ago,
Shout out to Kofi
and
TV. Go
definitely
ahead.
shout out to Kofi Pasa TV and Mossy Warrior Clan. You know, those brothers have been truly big brothers in scholarship as well as yourself in terms of gearing me, guiding me, and molding me and helping me along my way as I do presentations, um, and as I start to really write myself. Um, so we were speaking, and I was explaining to him about, you know, the drum itself is inseparable from the people. When you start to talk about African traditions and what certain people did, either in West Africa, Central Africa, wherever in Africa, you have to remember that a lot of the history and a lot of the culture is encapsulated in the songs and in the oral traditions that are passed along from the elders, from the griots. And so when we embark on learning about what the Fulani and the Malinke and the Hausa and the Susu and what all these different people were doing and what they do today, we have to understand that we need to tap into some of these songs and some of these rhythms that are being played to understand their history because they telling you who colonized them, who they were before being colonized, how they hold on to certain traditions although having a colonistic religion. Um, all of these things happen through music, and that is the beauty of African people because not only can you jam out and rock out, but you also getting a straight up history class
Mhm.
of our greatest, you know, Africans to ever walk the planet. And
All
so
right.
it is through that led wanting to learn more and to know more on the scholarship side because again I was geared in that from since I could read and write and walk pretty much. I always love to
Mhm.
read and learn. So that's how I make that connection.
Have you ever had an opportunity to see a drum made?
Yes, and I've skinned my own drum
Okay.
many times, but an actual carving of the wood and everything like that, I have not actually seen that. I haven't had that opportunity.
Yeah,
Not in person at least.
yeah, I've always wanted to learn that. Um, and the reason being, because I would not necessarily like I would lead that movement, but I would like to see African Americans keeping that tradition alive of making these drums, but making them with our own designs. That, because you know how like with certain African work, you can tell, oh, this mask comes from Congo, the Kuba people. This mask comes from, the Malinke people, et cetera, et cetera. And so and to a certain extent, certain drums you can tell comes from certain regions. And I think it would be dope if African Americans had their own drum tradition, you know, and to an extent during slavery in certain parts where the drum wasn't banned, uh, in more so like in the Caribbean, in South America, those traditions were brought. In the Americas, it was kind of hard because it was, kind of banned here. Um, but we would take whatever and make them a drum, including our feet. in hands. And but yeah, so I would love to see y'all drummers learn how to actually carve your own drums and then come up with an aesthetic that is unique to us. And we
That would
can
be dope.
trade drums, saying across the continent. Like you go to Mali or Ghana and get some drums, and they come over here and get some unique drums. And so, um, before we continue, I want to shout out everyone in the chat room. And so, uh, let me scroll up a little bit. Peace to Sister Amber, One Love, Jehuti, Maat, uh, Zane Montego, Niger Valley Civilization, Brother Mathis, and thanks to Ivan Vasquez for the contributions. And just want to thank you all. Enigma 9 by 9. Peace to everyone who is listening live, as well as those who are coming back to listen to when it archives. So thank you, everyone. Please like the video, share the video. We have a good dynamic brother with us today, Brother T'Challa Bangoura, and he's telling us a little bit about himself, drum tradition in West Africa, and how he got into the drum. Now, my next question to you is: Have you ever recorded, or do you have any plans to record, if you have not already, some of your music?
Um, so I've been I did a recording with my grandmaster teacher, Mamadi Keita,
Mm,
and my teacher here in Chicago some years back. Um, and we were in the studio and we recorded for an album. I was playing some accompaniment parts, and I actually had the privilege of doing so to hang out with the Grand Baba
mm,
and and to have that experience in the studio. It's actually my first time and really only time really recording in the studio.
mm,
So I found that to be very special, being that I was doing some West African drumming in the studio for my first time. Um, I'll have to go on the website to get the name of the actual album,
mm.
and I can, get that to you.
All right.
Um, Also, I have a short clip on Netflix in a movie.
Mm,
It's called Southside with You, and it's about Barack Obama and Michelle Obama meeting
uh,
here. And there's a scene where they're walking in a park, and me and many of my teachers and peers are drumming in the background here in Chicago. And this was filmed a couple years back, and it was a wonderful experience as well. Um, And before we move forward with your next question or any
mhm.
commentary, I want to kind of speak to what you brought up in terms of our history with the drum here in America, because a lot of us don't know what happened.
Okay, go
And
ahead.
yeah, so with with the Malinke culture, let me back up and explain um, exactly where I'm coming from with this. I've been on Kofi Paisa TV in Mossy Warrior Clan. But for those that haven't checked out the presentations, this tradition is from the Malian Empire. And, around the year 1000, give or take, the Numu, which are the blacksmiths, who I always kimit because of their dexterity and their level of focus when it comes to carving and making these drums, they are the ones who started carving djembe and dunu out of the trees.
Mm,
And the women were singing and clapping, doing their work as they always do, if you know anything about African tradition. That's what they do. They got the mortar and pestle, and they're doing their thing, and they're always singing and clapping and dancing and joyous. Um, so the new moves started mapping the songs and the rhythms that they were clapping and stomping their feet onto the drum. And over time, they get more elaborate, and we develop accompaniment parts. Um, is actually part of the project that I'm doing. I'm actually doing science of the djembe, how the sounds are actually produced, because no one has ever really done that in terms of how we actually make these sounds. Um, and it's often referred to as the magical drum because the layperson just picks up a drum and they're not able to play it.
Hmm.
But they're able to see someone who's experienced that we're making all these sounds, and they're just like blown away. But
So are you saying that we can't just tap into our Akashic records and the ancestral spirit moves us into playing the drums? Was Dave Chappelle wrong for that commentary?
oh man, if it was that easy, we all be sitting around here master drummers for real.
Yeah.
It's a very, very complex discipline, and you have to have um patience in order to do it like anything else.
All right.
Um, and so, over time, we fast forward to where the Portuguese start to pick us up. Slave trade was handed off to them, and here we are being brought over. And so, in the middle passage, on our way over here, they collected us, our instruments, and some other things, artifacts. They collected a whole, but they were hoarding. They were
Mhm.
taking all that they can get. Robbing. That's what you do. And with these drums, they at first they would allow us to actually play them because they wanted entertainment. That's you talking about from Senegal, port of no return, all the way across the Atlantic Ocean, into the Caribbean, what we call the Caribbean Sea and islands now. And so that's a long way. And
Mhm.
so, we were trying to, those of us that didn't jump overboard and lose our minds as we're dehydrated and sick and everything else, we're trying to keep these monsters entertained. And we begin to play, but something happens while we start playing. We begin to invoke the spirit of our ancestors in the sense that we begin to stand up for ourselves and fight back. And we start taking over the slave owners on the actual ship.
Mhm.
And so with that, they start to take the drum away from us because everybody who played the drum and started singing and joining in, they became angry because we were kidnapped victims and they didn't want to be on that ship no more. And so we start to fight back, and then they say, well, take the drums away.
Mhm.
So they seize the drums, and we make it over here in America. Okay. So now they've held our drums. They're beheading those who still choose to speak the original language. Um, and over time, they start to allow us to drum and dance on Sunday.
Mhm.
And this speaks to the significance of that day for Black people and where it started. Because as we know, the preachers were permitted to learn, the story of the Bible and teach it to the rest of the Black people on that particular day. And they allowed us to sing and dance and drum and everything like that as well. Over time, again, the same thing happens where we start to rebel and fight back. And not to mention, as I spoke about communicating from village to village, we talking about in the deep south where they know skyscrapers. and it ain't a whole lot in the air that's blocking sound waves. So we're playing djembe is a loud instrument. Dununs, they're very loud. And so we're able to communicate from plantation to plantation. And we would hear these songs and we would know what rhythms are played to know when to start the rebellion. And once that started happening too much, then they started taking all the drums away. And so djembe had a short period in time in America during that time, before they just took them all away because they slaves was fighting back.
I see. So, do you feel that the drum in the modern age can be used as um a revolutionary instrument? Like what role does the drum play in our lives and in the future for African people in general, but African Americans in particular?
Um, okay, so I'll speak to that question with the drum and music in general.
Hmm.
Um, because part of my work that I do here in Chicago is um, I've done programs for homeless teens. I've done programs for teens on parole, adults on parole. I do regular school programs, teach regular adult classes, and I get all backgrounds, right?
Hmm.
Um, and what I find in the feedback that I get, especially by the hip hop artists and the lyricists and aspiring rappers, they fall in love the minute I touch the drum. And they find themselves connecting with the drum in terms of they feel that it is a necessary thing to have. They don't want that part, even if they don't study, you know, most black people aren't really versed in Africana studies at all. They don't know nothing about who they are, until we actually embark and learn. But we have this sort of affection, those of us that don't deny our roots and don't hate ourselves.
Hmm.
We have this sort of affection and soft spot when we see African music and dance and things being performed. And it is a very important role that it plays because, you know, from the countless artists that have featured live drumming and from just even any song that you listen to and you notice the beat, a song consists of a good rhythm and a message in the lyrics. And without either of those, it's not complete. And so, although we've undergone, physical slavery, still going through fighting through mental slavery and having this identity crisis, many of us still hold the drum in high regard, just as we do on the continent. And to music in general, like, you know, I mean, I grew up with the Marvin Gaye in the background, grits cooking, folding clothes, and ironing clothes for the week, you know, Aretha Franklin and the likes, these great ancestors. So music and drum and all of that it is a part of who we are, in my opinion.
All right. Do y'all have I know for a while when I was living in Houston, Houston, Texas, there's a park called Emancipation Park. And people used to meet there on Sundays to do drumming. It'd be a big drum circle. Just anybody who has these drums, you can meet there. Or sometimes if it wasn't Emancipation Park, it was, what was that park name? It's by the zoo. Um, but either way it goes, on Sundays they would meet, saying to have these drum circles. Is there anything like that in Chicago?
Yes. Yes, we have what's called 63rd Street Beach,
Uh,
and that's located on the south side of Chicago off the lakefront. And Yeah, usually on the weekends, Saturdays, definitely Sundays. You get all the bobbers of the community that have been playing congas, and they bring djembes, whatever drum that they have, and any and everybody is welcome to go and play.
All right.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think we need more of those, some more Congo squares, to be exact, across the country, and I think that would help to uh, you know, popularize these drums and spark the interest of playing. Because I know, like, you know, when we would go, of course, you would always draw a crowd, and so people want to know, you know, where they can get one and how they can start learning and things of that nature. So sometimes you just got to go out in the public. So um, I mean, I live in Philly. I'm in Texas right now, and so my drum is 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 back home. But is there a way? I don't know where you're physically located right now, but do you have one of your drums nearby? And if so, would it be too much to ask to hear a little something for like 1 minute?
No, we can go ahead and make that happen.
All right,
Now,
and
I
go
might get
ahead.
some crazy neighbors try to, you know, but we'll
Yeah,
deal
that
with it during this quarantine.
yeah. uh, while he is getting his drum and getting ready, if any of you in the chat have any questions for our guest, Brother T'Challa Bangoura, please leave it in the chat, and I'll make sure that I ask him. And um, I think I don't know if I've shouted out Brother Mathis, Diana Muhammad. Thank you for joining us, Dwayne Williams, Furious. I don't know if I shouted out Jehuti Ma'at already. Uh, Brother Eni Harit, Brother Sean. Thank you all for joining and participating in the chat. And so, you know, if I had my drum here, you would hear me play. And do you play any other, just outside of the drums? Do you play any other African instrument?
No, I pretty much had my time sewed up with djembe and dunun and stuff. I'd like to learn some other African instruments. So,
All right,
yeah. Let me see. Can you hear that?
I can hear it.
Okay. So I'm gonna give y'all what's called a djembe Khan, a little short demonstration, which means the sound of the djembe. In Malinke, Khan means sound of. Djembe is the drum. So this is what we call a djembe Khan.
Mhm. Excellent, excellent. See, that's what we that's the alarm clock we need in the morning. You know, if I had that, I'll definitely get up with a little bit more fervor, uh, or whatnot. I appreciate it. I appreciate it greatly.
Hmm.
Um, what's the biggest? Because I know, you know, when you get to certain drums, it got that bass to it. Like,
Uh-huh.
you know, what's the biggest one you've played?
It's funny you ask about that because that's the first thing that any African American usually asks. They want
Mhm.
that bass drum, you know. So we like to ride around with a couple 15s in the trunk or something, you know,
Hey
a
man,
couple
this is
12s or something, you know.
part of the heritage, man. We need that.
Yeah. It's so that word Dunumba is the name of the drum.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And I kind of explained this a few times, but here for the listening audience, I want to kind of just briefly break down that word because it means several different things. So you have a dunumba, which means the drum itself. It's the usually the largest drum, and it definitely has the deepest pitch. It's definitely the bass drum,
Mm,
right? So then also because the suffix ba means big, you have dunumba, which means big. It's a big party, a big gathering.
mm,
Another word for that is bantaba, big gathering, large circle of people, and there's music and dance happening in that circle. Um, and then dunumba also means a family of rhythms that have their own rules and construct within the djembe orchestra music. They have certain constants that function throughout all of them, but they all differ from each other. Um, and so you could actually study djembe music and just play dundumba rhythms your whole life, and you will have lived a very fruitful
mhm,
life because it's just that it's hundreds of dundumba rhythms. Um, and so the meaning for these rhythms is for young men to settle their differences rather than getting their spears, bows and arrows, fists, guns, whatever, and just wiping each other off the face of the planet.
yeah,
And so I feel here in America, as you're, talking about what role this drum plays with us, I feel the djembe tradition is extremely important, especially being here in Chicago. I know every hood is a hood, but
mhm,
Chi-Town, man, we get down up here, yo. It's some. I mean, you just see some of the dumbest, and you wonder, is there a way to bring us together,
mhm,
and so that we're not filled with so much hate? And I find that music usually calms things down,
mhm,
um, depending on the extent of the altercation.
yeah.
hmm So, mhm.
Someone asked in the chat if you do, and if you, I'm altering this question a little bit. If you do, or are you willing to do online classes for teaching drum?
um, I've been asked about this a few times, and I'm definitely open to that idea. Would definitely be willing to do some online drumming classes.
Hmm. All right. Well, so I'm pretty sure when you decide if you're going to do that, that you will announce it. Do you have your? I normally um, save this question for the end, but your own social media platforms. Do you have, like, an Instagram where you kind of showcase these things, or Twitter or whatever, that people can get in contact with you? So if you decide to do such classes, that this would be your go-to in terms of announcing it.
Um, now don't laugh at me, everybody, but I'm not as active on social media as the rest of the world nowadays. I pretty much stay to myself, get into my studies. But what I do have some a couple websites of drum and dance groups here in Chicago.
uh,
Um, I believe you shouted out one of my good sisters that's listening in right now, Diana Muhammad.
yeah.
Um, Good, beautiful sister there. Her and her sister, they've, you know, part of the community here in Chicago that have taken me under their wing um, all these years. But um, I do have an Instagram, and it's the same. My name here, T'Challa Bangoura, with an underscore in between.
Mhm.
Um, and if anyone reaches out via Instagram, I would definitely respond and be from this day forth checking it more often,
Uh,
um, so that I can be reached and everything like that.
all right, I'm gonna change the question up a little bit, in terms of, from your experience, do you know of any particular societies where the drumming class, if I can say that, that it's attached to any kind of what I would call, after Dr. Kakosa Kajangu, a wisdom center or a wisdom tradition, but we would know more generally here in the West as a secret society. So, is there any kind of secret societies that you're familiar with where, in order to learn drumming or be able to handle certain types of drums in their society, that you have to be initiated into this uh, wisdom center?
Um, yeah, so it in West Africa, and I speak a lot of times you hear me specifically only say West Africa because I don't like to step outside of my lane.
Uh-huh.
Um, so I don't know what you would call griots in other areas of Africa,
Hmm.
but the griots um, are the storytellers and the keepers of the tradition in the villages. And depending on your last name, depends on what role you'll have in that society. And so, say for instance, your last name is Cognate or Giabate, um, then you would be traditionally one who would grow up playing the kora, the balafon, and so forth and so on. If you have like Keita, Keita, is the last name meaning lion in Malenge. So you might be associated with one who can go ahead and start learning the djembe drum in Malenge. Because your last name is not of one of those who are only a few that I mentioned, a couple that I mentioned, that are it's about your family lineage and what your family last name is in terms of what role you'll have. And djembe folas actually have a pretty important role in a society because they're the ones announcing all of the initiations. They're the ones traveling from villages to, tell everybody else about it. And they're the ones accompanying the workers in the field while they're tilling the land. They play when we come back, have a successful time in fishing. Every single thing you can think of, djembe folas are present.
Hmm.
And djembe fola just means one who makes the djembe speak, not someone who sits down and tip a tapper like, a couple times on the drum and now all of a sudden they're a djembe player. No, we're talking about ones who actually make this drum speak.
Hmm.
And so it's taken very seriously uh, in West Africa.
All right. Um, we are interviewing or having a conversation with our good brother T'Challa Bangoura, who is, and I'll just say it whether he likes it or not, master drummer, um, out of the shy, and we're talking about a variety of things. And this is interactive as always. So if you have any questions for our good brother, please do not hesitate to um, put it in the chat. And so I want to say first, peace to Kofi, Pasai TV in the building, Jessica, Michella, if I'm saying that, or Machiella, if I'm saying that correctly. Peace to Michael Phillips. And if I missed anybody, I do apologize. Thank you all for joining the conversation. So, with um, what do you hope to see? And it doesn't necessarily have to be related to the drum per se, but what would you like to see? Like, what is your vision for African people in general and African Americans in particular, um, in terms of uh, culture, in terms of knowledge, in terms of economics? What's your vision and what do you hope to contribute to the realization of that vision?
Mm, okay. So as African Americans first,
Mm-hmm.
um, more on a broad scale, I'd like to see more homegrown businesses supported locally, first in your respective cities, right? And I'm getting into my Dr. Amos blueprint for Black Power mode here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so more homegrown businesses supported by the surrounding people in your community, right? Instead of hating on sister so and so because she got a dressmaking thing going on. You don't buy her dresses, you go over here. Or, everybody get their nails done. I'd like to see them opening up your own nail shops, things of that nature, things that we already do, not necessarily trying to connect it to quote unquote African, continental African culture, but things that we do here that relate to us specifically that we know that's an importance. Um, so all of the things that we're into, I'd like to see us develop our own enterprises here first. Then, speaking to what you said earlier about the African Americans coming up with our own drums and kind of like, somebody from Mali come over here, get a drum, we go over there, get a drum. I'd like to see something like that with our businesses and drums included, where we have this global economic superstructure, um, where we're trading goods, we're buying goods, and we're, all the time giving and receiving, the nature of reciprocity, in true African fashion.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then specifically for Africans globally, I want to see more support, period. Just more helping solve not only the problems in your community and in your nation, but without losing your sense of identity, aligning and allying with other Africans to help them solve their problems just as we did way back when. And just as we do even right now today, here in America and on the continent, you can find successful businesses, you find people helping people. Like I said, I mean, I wouldn't be where I am without my community here, family, friends, the whole nine. So, with that said, this business of waking up and having the occupation of being a hater, as we call it, there's a lot of that period around the world that I notice with our people. And it starts with, like I said, developing your own thing and having some sustenance for yourself and being supported locally so that you don't have to get mad at someone else shining. Don't be afraid to let other black people shine because it's okay. Because when they're shining and they're doing well, they're more likely to want to help you out, especially if you support them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so that's the vision that I see. More global support.
All right. Um, what are some okay, let me ask it this way. What are some of the latest books that you've read that you recommend for our listening audience to read? And if any of those books have anything to do with me or anything that I publish, skip those. So we're talking about other books of knowledge that you've read that has impacted you in a real way that you recommend for my listening audience.
Okay. I'm glad you put that qualification there because you know I was gonna plug you, right? um okay. So we have this is a book my brother-in-law is letting me take a look at. It's called Seeking the Saku
Dr. Wade
by Dr.
Nobles.
Wade Nobles.
Mhm.
Yes. That's definitely one. And it's not just so much as reading the book, is really, are you really comprehending, and can you really apply what's being given forth in said books. um I have here this Djembe curriculum book that gives a lot of history and rhythm meaning, in terms of specifically what I do. I recommend the book even if you aren't going specifically for the diploma or trying to take your test to become a TTM professor. Um, it's just general knowledge
All
about
right.
West Africa and their people. Um, and um, Another book I've been taking a look at, by University of Kemet Press Research, is the SABA, a Researcher's First Handbook, in terms of understanding methodology and how to really go about research. It's a very, very good book, and to not be biased when it comes to research.
Hmm.
Um, so those outside of obviously your works are what I've been kind of reading lately.
All right.
So,
And what is because I'm starting this segment where I want to promote certain knowledge and things of that nature, kind of find out, what people are reading and what's their favorite works. So regardless to the time period in which you've read uh the work, what is your most favorite work that has been written?
mm. um, it's actually another works by University of Kemet Press.
uh,
Ma'at.
uh
Um, and the reason why that's kind of right now one of my favorites is, again, the the level of application that comes from the work in terms of everyday
mm,
real world practical problems and issues you can solve socially, economically, everything. um it lays it out in a form where the layperson can actually digest and relate to it, and they're able to grasp the concepts, and they can see themselves applying those things, because it talks about kind of where we are today in terms of not just focused on information that they can't really, abstract ideas they can't really grasp.
mm. All right. Well, we're coming to a close on this particular discussion, and I want you to, before we go, to again, give the public your social media where they can contact you, and if you have any announcements to any kind of shows or things that you are doing in the future, regardless to where it's located, if you can give that information out to the public.
Okay. As far as social media, you can definitely reach out to, um, join any Kofi Pie Side TV live presentation or Masu Warrior Clan. As of lately, I've been back more active, as a part of the affiliate families, and be on the lookout for something special that's coming very soon by Kofi Pie Side TV family and affiliates research team, working on a little something special for you guys. So just be on the lookout for that, coming up real soon. And I'll give my Instagram again so that people can have it. It's T'Challa_Bangoura. And as far as actual shows, given the circumstances we all under, I don't
Oh
see
yeah,
me
that's
doing
right.
it.
I keep
But
I'm a homebody myself, so I keep forgetting that like everyone's now forced to be home,
yeah,
but yeah, so yeah, that even more so that means you just got to do uh an online concert at least. Go with the D Nice, Erica Badu, Questlove, quarantine tradition, and
yeah,
and do the live. And I'm mad because I don't, I'm a producer. I do the keys and MIDI and produce, And I'm like, this would be the perfect time for me just like to do a live, production thing. And but I don't have none of that, here with me. It's all in Philly. But I do appreciate you coming through, and we're gonna do it like the church, and sharing your testimony uh, with the public, with my listening audience. And I wish nothing but big things for you. So hopefully we get to see you on an album cover. And now I got to go check out the movie. What is it called? Southside with you, for that small clip. And I appreciate you again coming through and conversing with the family. And since we don't have any more questions or whatnot, I'll end it. So I'm trying to keep it under an hour, and not do our normal Dagger Squad 6 hour uh, conversations in this day and age. But everyone stay safe. If you have orders to be inside, be inside. Take this opportunity to catch up on some reading or to develop a new skill. I also recommend I'm actually taking the course right now. It's a free course on Coursera called Science Matters. Let's talk about the coronavirus or COVID-19. So it's a 8-week course. It's a free course and give you all the lowdown on the coronavirus. So since that is the time we are in, please be informed. So pick up a skill if you have a business or you have a business idea. Don't squander this time just chilling on the internet in terms of Facebook. Start, writing down and organizing your thoughts so when this dies down, you can hit the ground running because you already have your plan in order. And or if you are into something, kind of look at the opportunities. What opportunities does this quarantine create? I'm saying, for you. So wherever there's tragedy, there's opportunity for stuff. So kind of look at what problems you can solve in this time. And so again, I appreciate everyone. I appreciate you, Brother T'Challa. And so with that said, I'm not going to be doing a lecture this week on my program because, as y'all know, I'm in school, and this weekend I have finals. But I will pick it up next week. So next Friday, I'm going to be doing another Aluja Volume 2 lesson 7 on African religion, which we call Kimoyo, which is the religion of vitalism. And so we're going to explain kind of the crux of what makes African religions unique. And so, and then be prepared for April, because I haven't picked the date yet, but I'm going to have 3 lectures in a row. So it's going to be like a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or something to that nature, whatever days that I choose. And it will be on the Afroasiatic language family. So it's going to be broken up into 3 sections. The first one is going to be on science and what is science and how is science done, the scientific method, and just and the kinds of questions that science intends to answer. So so that's going to be lecture 1. Lecture 2 is going to be on the historical comparative method and just historical comparative linguistics in general. So we're going to go through and show you the step by step on how historical comparative linguistics is done. Then on day 3 is going to be on Afroasiatic, and why Afroasiatic is, 1, not scientific, and 2, it is not built from the historical comparative method in linguistics. So we'll see the evidence in real time on this matter. So this is going to be done sometime in April, probably mid-April, but I'm gonna do it 3 days in a row. So be like an hour, hour and a half lessons for each day. And then the fourth day will be question and answer. So, I won't do any question and answer. I won't answer any questions on those 3 days. But, of course, you would have to jot it down. And then on the fourth day, I'll open the thing up for panel discussion and questions from the chat. So be on the lookout for those things. And um, thank you all for the support. And y'all be safe and blessed. And I will see y'all later. Thank you, Brother T'Challa, for
Thank you.
joining. And peace and blessings to everyone. We're out.